September 17, 1944, the Hürtgen Forest, Germany. The cold walnut stalk pressed against Alara Whitmore's cheek. 420 yards downrange through the dense lattice of pine and fog, a German sniper settled into position. She watched him through the Weaver 330C scope. Watched the way he moved, deliberate, patient, professional. He didn't know she was there. Below him, 8 American soldiers moved up the logging road in tactical formation. Young men, 19, maybe 20 years old, farm boys and factory workers who'd crossed an ocean to fight a war most of them didn't fully understand. They were exposed, vulnerable, and in exactly 30 seconds the German sniper would begin killing them. Alara's breathing slowed. Her heartbeat settled into that peculiar rhythm only snipers understand. The rhythm of the hunt. The wind shifted through the canopy. 6 miles per hour left to right. She calculated automatically now, muscle memory fused with mathematics. Bullet drop at this range 41 inches. Upward angle to the target 15 degrees. The Springfield M1903A4 would compensate, but only if she accounted for everything. Her finger found the trigger. Somewhere in the back of her mind, words echoed. Words from 3 months earlier spoken in a sterile psychiatric ward in England. Words that were supposed to have ended everything. Unsuitable for continued military service. Patient exhibits dangerous emotional constriction inconsistent with unit cohesion. Recommend immediate discharge under Section 8. The discharge papers had been signed. Her war was supposed to be over, but Alara Whitmore had refused to leave. She'd torn those papers into pieces in front of Captain Thaddeus Crane and volunteered for the most lethal assignment the Army could offer. Forward reconnaissance, sniper operations. In what had become the bloodiest killing ground American forces had yet encountered in the European theater. Now, with German crosshairs about to find American flesh, Alara made the calculations that separated amateur shooters from true killers. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. A sharp sound that cut through the forest silence like a blade through skin. Through the scope, she watched the German jerk. Watched him lose his grip on the branch. Watched him tumble 40 feet through pine needles and broken limbs before hitting the forest floor with an impact. She couldn't hear but could see in the way the underbrush exploded outward. The American patrol below froze, confused. They'd heard the shot but couldn't locate its origin. After 5 seconds, their sergeant waved them forward. They continued up the road, never knowing how close they'd come to dying. Alara worked the bolt, the brass casing ejected in a graceful arc glinting in the filtered sunlight before disappearing into the carpet of needles at her feet. She chambered another round, kept the scope trained on the German's body. No movement, she'd hit him center mass. The fall had done the rest. Her first kill in the Hürtgen had been perfect. But what the United States Army was about to discover would force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about who should be trusted with a rifle and a license to kill. 72 hours earlier, the psychiatric ward at the 112th General Hospital in England smelled like antiseptic and fear. Alara sat in a wooden chair across from Dr. Edmund Ashford, a man whose kind eyes and gentle voice had convinced hundreds of soldiers to confess their breaking points. "Tell me about Callum," Dr. Ashford said. Alara looked past him through the window to where rain streaked down glass that hadn't been properly cleaned in weeks. "What about him? He was your bunkmate, your friend according to the others in your unit." Ashford consulted his notes. Callum Mackenzie, 19 years old, from a cattle ranch outside Laramie, Wyoming, died during a training exercise when a grenade malfunctioned. "Yes." "He died in your arms." "Yes." "And you felt—" Alara's gaze remained fixed on the rain. "I felt that I needed to clean my rifle. There was blood on the stock." Ashford wrote something down. His pen scratched against paper with a sound like claws on wood. Did you cry? No. Did you feel sad? No. Angry? No. What did you feel, Elara? She finally looked at him. Her gray eyes were flat as winter sky. Nothing. I felt nothing at all. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. Outside, an ambulance arrived, its engine cutting through the rain's white noise. Wounded men from the Normandy beaches, Elara knew. Men who'd seen things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. She envied them the ability to be haunted. How long have you been this way? Ashford asked quietly. This way. Detached. Unable to process normal emotional responses. Elara considered the question. Always, I think. My mother died when I was 8. Pneumonia. I remember my father crying at the funeral. I remember thinking I should cry too, so I did. But it felt like acting, like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. And you've been pretending ever since, until I stopped bothering to pretend. Ashford set down his pen. He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, Elara saw something in his expression that might have been sadness. Or maybe pity. She wasn't sure. Reading emotions in others had always been difficult, like trying to decipher a language she'd never quite learned. I'm going to be honest with you, Elara, he said. What you're describing isn't normal. It's a condition we classify as severe emotional constriction with schizoid personality features. In civilian life, it might not matter much, but in the military and combat, soldiers need to bond. They need to care about each other. That caring is what keeps units together under fire. I understand. I don't think you're trying to be difficult. I think you genuinely can't help what you are. But that doesn't change the fact that you're unsuitable for military service. You represent a danger to unit cohesion, to morale. I scored expert marksman in basic training, Elara said, qualified with the Springfield at 600 yards with iron sights. My instructors said I was one of the best they'd seen. Your shooting isn't in question. Then what is everything else? Ashford picked up his pen again, signed something at the bottom of a form. I'm recommending your discharge under Section 8, psychiatric unfitness. You'll be processed out within the week and sent home to Montana. I'm sorry, Elara, I truly am, but the Army can't use someone like you. Elara stood, the chair scraped against the floor. Yes, sir. She walked to the door, hand on the knob, when Ashford spoke again. For what it's worth, he said, I hope you find peace, whatever that looks like for you. She didn't respond. There was nothing to say, but something unusual happened during Elara's discharge processing. The paperwork sat on a desk in the administrative building waiting for final signatures. It should have been routine, should have been finished within 24 hours. Instead, it sat there for 3 days while whispered conversations happened in officers' quarters behind closed doors in tones too low for enlisted personnel to overhear. Captain Thaddeus Crane had been watching Elara Whitmore for 6 months. Crane was 38, a Montana rancher before the war, a man who'd spent his youth hunting elk in the Bitterroot Mountains. He understood patience. He understood the peculiar stillness required to wait for hours without moving, watching for that one perfect moment when everything aligned. He'd seen Elara on the rifle range, watched her put 5 rounds through a man-sized target at 600 yards, with a grouping tight enough to cover with a silver dollar. More importantly, he'd watched her face while she did it. The absolute calm, the mechanical precision, the complete absence of fear or excitement or anything resembling normal human emotion. What Dr. Ashford saw as pathology, Captain Crane saw as potential. On the 3rd day, he entered the administrative building and found the discharge papers. He read them carefully, read Dr. Ashford's evaluation, Read the incident report about Callum Mackenzie's death and Alara's documented lack of response. Then he picked up the papers, folded them, and walked to the officers' mess where he knew he'd find Major William Hendricks having breakfast. "I need 5 minutes," Crane said. Hendricks, a career Army man with 3 decades of service, looked up from his eggs. "This about the Whitmore girl, the one Ashford flagged?" "Yes, sir." "I read the file. Clear case. Section 8 discharge. What's to discuss?" "I think we're making a mistake." Hendricks set down his fork. "Explain." "The Germans are killing us with snipers," Crane said. 15% of our casualties in certain sectors. They've got men who've been doing this since the Eastern Front. Professionals. Men who understand that modern warfare isn't just about firepower, it's about psychological dominance. One skilled sniper can pin down an entire company. I'm aware of the problem. We're trying to match their capability, trying to identify and train snipers of our own. But we're using the wrong criteria. The wrong criteria. We're looking for well-adjusted soldiers, Crane said. Men who can bond with their units. Men who can handle the moral weight of taking a life at range. We screen out anyone who shows signs of emotional detachment or social dysfunction. As we should. With respect, sir, I disagree. Crane pulled out the discharge papers, smoothed them on the table. What if the traits we're screening out are exactly what the job requires? What if the best snipers aren't the most well-adjusted soldiers? Hendricks leaned back, his eyes narrowed. You're suggesting we weaponize mental illness. I'm suggesting we recognize that different roles require different psychological profiles. A rifleman in an infantry charge needs to care about the men beside him. Needs that bond to keep moving forward when everything in his body is screaming to run. But a sniper... Crane tapped the papers. A sniper works alone, spends hours, sometimes days, in complete isolation. Has to watch another human being through a magnified scope and pull the trigger without the moral hesitation that saves lives in other contexts, but gets you killed in this one. And you think Whitmore fits this profile? I know she does. I've watched her. The emotional detachment Ashford flagged as pathological. That's exactly what allows her to do what needs doing. She doesn't overthink, doesn't second guess, doesn't carry the psychological burden that breaks other shooters. Hendricks was silent for a long moment. Outside, the sounds of a military camp at breakfast drifted through the window. Men laughing, joking, living. If you're wrong, Hendricks said finally. If she breaks or becomes a danger to her unit, it's on you. Understood, sir. And if she succeeds, then we learn something valuable about who should be behind a sniper rifle. Hendricks picked up his coffee, took a sip, thinking. 30 days. Attach her to a forward reconnaissance unit in the Hurtgen sector. If she survives, if she proves effective, we'll reconsider. If not... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. When they brought Alara into Captain Crane's office the next morning, she stood at attention, expecting to sign the final discharge documents. Instead, Crane handed her a set of orders. She read them again, looked up. I don't understand, she said. Your discharge has been postponed pending operational evaluation, Crane said. You're being assigned to Lieutenant Silas Brennan's platoon. Forward reconnaissance and counter-sniper operations in the Hurtgen forest. Counter-sniper. The Germans are bleeding us dry. We need shooters who can match their capability. I think you can do that. Dr. Ashford said I was unsuitable. Dr. Ashford said you were unsuitable for normal infantry service. He's right. You are. Crane stood, walked to the window, looked out at the rain. But this isn't normal infantry service. This is specialized work. Solitary work. Work that requires someone who can disconnect from everything human and just execute. Alara studied the orders. And if I fail, then you'll be discharged. Probably dead. The Hurtgen is the most dangerous sector in the European theater. German snipers are killing American soldiers with impunity. Several men we've sent after them are already dead. Why me? Crane turned. For the first time, Alara saw something in his expression that might have been respect or calculation. Because I think what makes you broken in peacetime makes you perfect for war. I think you can do things other soldiers can't because you don't carry the weight they carry. And I think you deserve the chance to prove that what you are isn't a disability. It's an adaptation. Alara looked at the orders again, at the words forward reconnaissance, at the phrase counter-sniper operations, at the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a place in this world where being broken was exactly what was needed. She looked up. When do I leave? Tomorrow morning, 0600. There's a transport convoy heading to the front. Crane returned to his desk, sat down. One more thing, Whitmore. I'm not saving you out of kindness. I'm using you. I'm betting your psychological profile makes you an effective weapon. If I'm right, you'll save American lives. If I'm wrong, you'll die in a German forest and I'll feel guilty for about 10 minutes. I understand, sir. Do you? Yes, sir. You're treating me like a tool, like a rifle. You don't expect me to have feelings about it because you don't think I'm capable of feelings. She tilted her head slightly. You're not wrong. For just a moment, something flickered across Crane's face. Discomfort, maybe. Or the faint recognition that he was looking at something fundamentally other than himself. Dismissed, he said quietly. Alara saluted, turned, walked out into the rain that was still falling over England in the autumn of 1944, 3 months before everything would change. September 17th, 1944. 90 minutes after the shot. Lieutenant Silas Brennan reached Alara's position with a patrol of 6 men. They'd heard the rifle crack echo through the forest and were prepared for the possibility that they'd find her wounded or dead. Instead, they found her exactly where they'd left her 38 hours earlier. Rifle still trained on the forest, expression unchanged. The only sign she'd moved at all was the single spent brass casing near her right boot. Report, Brennan said. Enemy sniper, 420 yards elevated position in the pine cluster northeast, eliminated. You engaged against orders. He was about to engage American personnel, 8 men on the logging road. Your orders were observation only, no engagement unless in self-defense. Alara finally looked at him. Her gray eyes were flat as gunmetal. Would you prefer I let them die, sir? Brennan's jaw worked. He was 29, a schoolteacher from Vermont before the war. A man who'd earned his commission through OCS, and who still believed wars should be fought according to rules and regulations. Men like Alara Whitmore made him profoundly uncomfortable. Send 2 men forward, he said to his sergeant. Verify the kill. The patrol moved out. Brennan stood beside Alara, looking out at the forest that held 10,000 places for a sniper to hide. After a moment, he spoke again, quieter this time. I read your file, he said. Read what Dr. Ashford wrote. Read about the incident with Mackenzie. Alara said nothing. I think Captain Crane made a mistake sending you here, Brennan continued. I think you're a danger, not to the enemy, to us, to the men around you who need to know their fellow soldiers care whether they live or die. My job is to kill German snipers, sir, not to care about feelings. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Brennan turned to face her directly. War isn't just about killing, it's about why we kill. What we're willing to sacrifice. If you don't understand that, if you can't feel that, then you're just a murderer with a uniform. For the first time, something flickered in Alara's expression. Not anger, not hurt, just a faint curiosity, like she was examining an interesting insect. Do you think the German I just killed cared about why he was killing? She asked. Do you think he felt noble about shooting American soldiers in the back? Or do you think he was just good at his job? Before Brennan could respond, one of the scouts came back through the trees, moving fast. "Sir," the man said, breathing hard, "you need to see this." They followed him to where the German sniper's body lay twisted at the base of the pine. The man had been in his 30s, well-fed, well-equipped. His carabiner 98K lay 5 feet away, the ZF-39 telescopic sight cracked from the impact. But it was what the scout had found in the dead man's jacket that made Brennan go pale. A small leather journal, and inside, written in precise German script, a list of names, dates, and locations. 47 entries. 47 confirmed American kills over the previous 8 months. Intelligence would later identify the dead sniper as Klaus Richter, a Gefreiter assigned to the 275th Infantry Division. One of their most effective snipers, a legend among German forces. A man personally responsible for American mothers receiving telegrams that began with the words, "We regret to inform you." Brennan looked at the journal, looked at the body, looked back at Alara, who'd followed them down and now stood examining Richter's rifle with professional interest. 47 kills, one of the scouts whispered. Jesus Christ, this was one of their best. Alara picked up the carabiner, checked the action, tested the scope. The sight's damaged, but the rifle's good, better than I expected. Did you hear what he said? Brennan asked. Richter was one of their best. The Germans will come after whoever killed him. Alara set down the rifle, looked at Brennan with those flat gray eyes. Let them come. She turned and walked back toward her position, leaving the lieutenant standing beside the body of a man who'd killed 47 Americans before meeting someone who didn't hesitate, who didn't doubt, who pulled the trigger with the same emotional investment most people brought to swatting Fleur. Brennan watched her go, thought about sending her back, thought about requesting her removal. But there were 47 names in that journal, 47 American boys who died because the army didn't have anyone capable of stopping Klaus Richter. Until now. Until Alara Whitmore, in a command post 20 kilometers east. A German officer named Oberst Heinrich Vogel read the casualty report with the careful attention of a man who understood that wars were won and lost in the details. Klaus Richter, dead, single shot from an unknown position. The American patrol he'd been targeting never even knew he was there. Vogel set down the report, looked at his intelligence officer. Who killed him? Unknown, Herr Oberst. The Americans have been attempting counter-sniper operations in the sector, but with little success. Most of their shooters are killed within their first week. Richter was our best in this sector. 47 confirmed kills. Yes, Herr Oberst. Vogel stood, walked to the map table where the Hurtgen sector was laid out in careful detail. Pins marked known American positions. Red markers indicated where German snipers were deployed. A lucky shot, the intelligence officer suggested. At 400 meters through dense forest, hitting a concealed target on first attempt. Vogel shook his head. No, not luck. Skill. Orders, Herr Oberst. Vogel studied the map, thought about Klaus Richter, who'd survived 2 years on the Eastern Front, who'd killed Russian snipers in Stalingrad, who'd been good enough that the Wehrmacht had transferred him west specifically to bleed American forces in the Hurtgen. And someone had killed him with a single shot. Increase security protocols for all sniper positions, Vogel said, and find out who did this. I want a name, I want a unit designation, I want to know everything about this shooter. And when we find them, Herr Oberst, Vogel's smile was thin and cold. Then I'll handle it personally. The next 2 days passed in a rhythm Alara understood instinctively. Lieutenant Brennan, still uncomfortable with her presence, assigned her to observation positions away from the main unit. Technically, she was supposed to watch and report. Technically, she was not supposed to engage unless directly threatened. But on the second day, Alara identified 2 German snipers working in tandem, a tactic the Wehrmacht had perfected on the Eastern Front. One shooter drew attention and fire while his partner eliminated anyone foolish enough to expose themselves. She watched them for 3 hours, studied their pattern, the way they communicated with hand signals, the way they shifted positions every 40 minutes to avoid counter-battery fire. And when the moment came, when both snipers were briefly exposed while repositioning, Alara eliminated the first with a shot that entered through his left eye at 360 yards. The second sniper froze, looked around wildly, trying to locate the source of fire. Alara waited, controlled her breathing, let the man's panic do her work for her. 3 hours later, when the German finally convinced himself it was safe to move, she put a round through his chest at 410 yards. 2 shots, 2 kills. Both confirmed when American patrols checked the positions the following morning. Lieutenant Brennan was furious. "You engaged against direct orders again. They would have killed Americans. I prevented that. That's not your decision to make. Whose decision is it, sir?" "Yours. You weren't there. You didn't see what I saw. By the time I reported back and you authorized engagement, both snipers would have relocated and killed our people." Brennan's hands clenched into fists. "You're a soldier, Whitmore. You follow orders. You don't make tactical decisions on your own." "Then give me different orders, sir. Tell me to let American soldiers die while I wait for permission to save them. Put it in writing. I'll follow those orders exactly." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Finally, Brennan spoke, his voice tight. "Get out of my sight." Alara saluted and left. But that night, Brennan sent a report to Captain Crane, a report that documented Alara's actions. Her disobedience, her effectiveness, and the fact that in 4 days she'd eliminated 3 of the German snipers who'd been terrorizing American forces in the sector for weeks. Crane read the report, smiled slightly, wrote back a single sentence. "Give her more rope. Let's see what she does with it." On the 5th day, Alara met Garrett Sullivan. He was 22, from a farm outside Omaha, with the kind of open, honest face that made people trust him instantly. He'd been assigned as her radio operator, though both of them knew it was really Lieutenant Brennan's way of keeping tabs on her. Sullivan approached her position at dawn, moving through the forest with reasonable care, but nothing approaching the absolute silence Alara maintained naturally. "Morning," he said, settling in beside her hide. "Brought coffee. Well, what the Army calls coffee. Tastes like dirt, but it's hot." Alara didn't respond, kept her scope trained on a section of forest 300 yards out where she'd noticed disturbed foliage the previous evening. Sullivan poured 2 cups from his canteen, set one beside her. "You're supposed to take it. It's called being friendly. People do it." "I'm working." "You've been in this position for 6 hours. You can take 30 seconds to drink coffee." Alara finally glanced at him. "Why are you here?" "Radio operator. Supposed to maintain communications while you're forward deployed." "I don't need communications. I need silence." "Well, tough. Brennan's orders." Sullivan drank his coffee, made a face. "Jesus, this really is terrible." He looked at her curiously. "You always this cheerful, or is it just your sparkling morning personality?" "I'm focused on my job, which is sitting in a hole staring at trees, which is identifying and eliminating German snipers before they kill Americans." "Right, the whole sniper thing." Sullivan nodded. "I heard about Richter and the 2 you got yesterday. Pretty impressive shooting." Alara returned her attention to the scope. It's not impressive. It's mathematics and patience. That's it, no feeling, no rush when you pull the trigger. No. Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Then that doesn't bother you not feeling anything. Why would it bother me? Because you're killing people, human beings, men with families and lives and— They're enemy combatants, Alara interrupted. They're trying to kill American soldiers. I prevent that. The rest is irrelevant. The rest is what makes us human. Alara lowered the rifle, looked at Sullivan directly. Then maybe being human is overrated. She expected him to leave, expected him to report back to Brennan that she was exactly as broken as Dr. Ashford had documented. Instead, Sullivan just nodded slowly. Maybe you're right, or maybe you just haven't figured out how to be human yet. He stood, brushed pine needles off his uniform. Either way, I'll be on the radio if you need me. Try not to get killed, Whitmore. You're the only thing between us and about 6 more German snipers. He left, and for reasons Alara couldn't quite articulate, she found herself thinking about his words for the rest of the day. The kills continued. Number 4, a German sniper in a church steeple overlooking a contested village. 350 yards. Single shot through an opening barely 6 inches wide. The American assault company that took the village the next day lost 2 men instead of the estimated 20. Number 5, a concealed position in a farmhouse attic. 400 yards. The German had been using the same hide for 3 days, growing confident. Alara identified him by the slight discoloration on the roof tiles where his scope had disturbed decades of weather staining. 1 shot, confirmed kill. Numbers 6 and 7, a team working from separate positions on a ridgeline. Alara eliminated both in a span of 4 minutes, then disappeared before German patrols could locate her position. Number 8. The hardest shot yet. 520 yards through intermittent fog, hitting a target she'd only glimpsed for 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds had been enough. 8 confirmed kills in 2 weeks. By late September, German radio intercepts were showing something American intelligence hadn't seen before: panic, unknown. American sniper decimating forward positions. Request immediate reinforcement of counter-sniper protocols. 3 more snipers lost to unidentified shooter. Morale deteriorating. Men refusing advanced positions. Sector commander requests identification of American sniper. All attempts to locate have failed. What the German forces couldn't understand was how one shooter could cover so much territory, could appear at dawn 15 kilometers north and then eliminate a target at dusk 20 kilometers south, could seem to know exactly where every German sniper would be before they even got there. They concluded it had to be multiple snipers. No single person could be this effective. They were wrong. It was one woman with a rifle and a gift the army had almost thrown away. And then on September 28th, everything changed. Alara was in her hide watching a sector she'd identified as likely for German sniper activity when she saw the message. Carved into a tree trunk 200 yards from her position. Fresh cuts made within the last few hours. German words in a precise, elegant script: Ich komme für dich, Geist. I'm coming for you, Ghost. Alara studied the message through her scope, studied the craftsmanship, the deliberate placement, the challenge implicit in the words. This wasn't random. This was personal. Somewhere out there another sniper was hunting her. And for the first time since arriving in the Hurtgen forest, Alara, Whitmore felt something stir in the empty space where other people kept their emotions. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. She smiled, just slightly, just enough. Let them come, she whispered to the forest. And somewhere 20 kilometers east, Oberst Heinrich Vogel cleaned his rifle and studied the reports about the American ghost who'd killed 8 of his best men. He smiled too. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. October 3rd, 1944. 20 kilometers east of the American lines. The German command post occupied what had once been a hunting lodge. Oak beams overhead, stone fireplace cold now unused despite the autumn chill. Maps covered every surface. Radio operators hunched over equipment transcribing messages in the dim light of oil lamps. Oberst Heinrich Vogel stood at the map table reading. The document before him was a war diary entry from the 275th Infantry Division. Authenticated, verified through 3 separate channels, the kind of operational report that told truths commanders didn't want to hear. October 2nd, 1944. Sniper operations continue to deteriorate. 8 confirmed losses in 14 days. Pattern suggests single American operator working independently across 20-kilometer front. Conventional counter-sniper protocols proving ineffective. Morale among forward observers declining. Men refusing advanced positions. Request immediate tactical reassessment. Vogel's adjutant, a young lieutenant named Fischer, stood at attention nearby, waiting. "Tell me about the American," Vogel said without looking up. Fischer consulted his notes. Intelligence analysis suggests female operator based on physical evidence recovered from hide positions. Boot prints indicate size corresponding to women's military issue. Construction of concealment positions shows lighter weight displacement. Hide dimensions smaller than standard male parameters. A woman. Vogel's tone was flat, neutral. Our propaganda section suggests we could exploit this. American desperation, sending women to fight men's war. The Reich's inherent superiority. The Reich's propaganda section is staffed by idiots who've never held a rifle in combat. Vogel finally looked up. His eyes were pale blue cold as Baltic ice. Gender is irrelevant, Fischer. Do you know what matters in a sniper? Marksmanship, Herr Oberst. Patience. The ability to remain absolutely still for hours while your body screams at you to move. The capacity to watch another human being through magnified optics and execute without moral hesitation. Vogel tapped the report. This American has killed 8 of our best men in 2 weeks. Killed Klaus Richter, 47 confirmed kills with a single shot at 420 meters through dense forest. That's not desperation. That's skill. Fischer shifted uncomfortably. Orders, Herr Oberst. Vogel walked to the window. Outside, rain fell on a German forest that had been killing ground for 1,000 years. Romans died here, medieval armies. And now Americans and Germans feeding the same hungry earth. I'm going forward, Vogel said, personally. Herr Oberst, your position is too valuable to risk. My position is to eliminate threats to German operations. This American is a threat. Vogel turned. 8 men, Fischer. 8 professional snipers dead, each one trained, each one experienced, each one killed before they even knew they were being hunted. Whoever this shooter is, they think like we think. They understand patience, distance, the mathematics of death. You believe they're like you, Herr Oberst, Vogel smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I believe they're what I am, a predator. And predators recognize each other. He picked up his rifle case. The Carabiner 98K inside had killed 56 confirmed targets. 56 men who'd made the mistake of being visible at the wrong moment. Prepare my equipment. I deploy at dawn. And if you encounter this American, then one of us will die, and the other will have proven something important. Vogel checked his watch. War isn't about ideology, Fischer. It's about who can kill more efficiently. I intend to prove German efficiency remains superior. He left the command post, left Fischer staring at maps that showed American positions creeping forward meter by meter, bought with blood and the kind of courage Vogel respected even as he worked to destroy it. Outside in the rain, Vogel thought about the American woman who'd carved out a legend in 2 weeks. thought about what kind of person could do that. What kind of emptiness inside made someone perfect for killing. He knew that emptiness well. He'd lived with it for 31 years. October 7th, 1944. American forward position. Garrett Sullivan found Alara in her hide at dawn. He'd learned to move quietly over the past 2 weeks. Learned which branches would crack and which would bend gently. Learned to watch where Alara's eyes went and understand what she was seeing. Brought breakfast, he said, settling in beside her. Powdered eggs and something that might be bacon if you squint and lie to yourself. Alara didn't respond. Her scope was trained on a section of forest 800 yards distant, where fog clung to the ground like funeral shroud. Sullivan unpacked the rations, set them between them. "You've been here for 12 hours, you need to eat." Later. That's what you said yesterday, and the day before. He opened the tin of eggs, the smell making him grimace. "Look, I know you don't need friends, don't need company, don't need anything human, but your body still needs calories or you'll get sloppy, and sloppy gets you killed. I'll eat when I'm done." "Done with what?" "The forest's empty, has been all morning." "No, something's wrong." Alara adjusted the scope fractionally. "The birds stopped singing an hour ago. Small animals have altered their patterns. Someone else is out there." Sullivan looked at the forest, saw nothing but trees and fog and the endless gray monotony of the Hurtgen. "You can tell that from watching." "Yes." "How?" "Because I'm watching for what doesn't belong." Alara's voice was quiet, distant. "The forest has a rhythm, patterns. When something disrupts those patterns, it means human presence. Someone who doesn't understand they're visible not through what they do, but through what they change." Sullivan was quiet for a moment, then, "You're hunting him. Aren't you the one who left that message?" "Yes." "You think it's Vogel?" "I know it's Vogel." Alara finally glanced at Sullivan. "German radio traffic increased 3 days ago. References to special counter-sniper deployment. Intelligence intercepted communications about an Oberst arriving forward, an Oberst with specific expertise in eliminating snipers." "So you're using yourself as bait." "I'm doing my job. Your job is killing Germans, not getting yourself killed by their best sniper." "He's not better than me." "How do you know?" Alara returned her attention to the scope. "Because I'm still alive." Sullivan shook his head, poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "You know what your problem is, Whitmore. You think war is just mathematics, bullet drop and wind speed and range calculations, but it's not. It's people trying to kill people, and people make mistakes when they're tired, when they're hungry, when they've been sitting in a hole for 12 hours watching empty forest." "I don't make mistakes." "Everyone makes mistakes." "Not me." Alara's tone was absolutely flat. "I can't afford to." Sullivan studied her profile, the gray eyes that never seemed to blink, the complete stillness of her body that made her look more like a weapon than a person. After 2 weeks working beside her, he'd begun to understand what Dr. Ashford had seen, what made Captain Crane think she could be useful. She wasn't broken, she was something else entirely. "Can I ask you something?" Sullivan said quietly. "If you must. Do you feel anything? When you pull the trigger?" Alara was silent for several seconds. Then no. Nothing at all. Nothing. Not satisfaction, not, I don't know, pride in good shooting. I feel the same thing you'd feel solving a mathematics problem correctly. Confirmation that the calculation was accurate. Nothing more." "That doesn't scare you. Why would it scare me?" Sullivan didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher, burning off the fog in patches, revealing the forest in layers like a slow unveiling. Sullivan ate his powdered eggs and pretended they tasted like the eggs his mother made back in Nebraska. Alara didn't eat, didn't move, Just watch through the scope with the infinite patience of something that had learned to outlast time itself. At 13:47 hours, everything went wrong. The artillery came without warning. German 100 WW2 shells screaming down from positions 10 kilometers east. The forest erupted in fire and shrapnel and the kind of chaos that turned men into pieces small enough to fit in regulation caskets. Sullivan grabbed Alara. "We have to move." But Alara was already moving, pulling him down, covering his body with her own as a shell impacted 30 yards away. The concussion wave hit like a physical blow. Dirt and pine needles and fragments of what might have been trees or might have been something worse rained down around them. The barrage lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of the earth trying to kill everything on its surface. When the silence came back, it was worse than the noise. Sullivan's ears rang. His head felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through his temples. He tried to sit up and felt Alara's hand on his chest holding him down. "Stay down," she said. "They'll send forward observers to assess damage. Anyone moving becomes a target." Sullivan obeyed, lay still despite every instinct screaming at him to run. Around them the forest was transformed, trees shattered, craters steaming, the air thick with cordite and burning wood and the copper smell of fresh blood. 20 yards away, someone was screaming. Sullivan recognized the voice. Private Marcus Webb. Young kid from Boston, 18 years old, had a girlfriend back home who sent him letters perfumed with something that smelled like roses. The screaming continued. Sullivan looked at Alara. "We have to help him. Moving exposes us. He's dying. He's already dead. Moving won't change that. It'll just add us to the count." But Sullivan was already crawling toward the sound. Moving through debris and broken earth toward where Webb lay with his legs shredded by shrapnel, blood pooling in the crater around him. Alara watched him go, calculated the risk, made a decision. She followed. They reached Webb together. The damage was catastrophic, both legs mangled below the knee, internal injuries evident from the way blood bubbled at his lips. Sullivan started applying pressure to the wounds, trying to staunch bleeding that couldn't be stopped. "We need a medic," Sullivan said. "We need—" The bullet hit him before he could finish the sentence, entered through his upper back, punched through lung and liver and exited just below his sternum in a spray of red that painted Webb's already bloody uniform a deeper shade of crimson. Sullivan's eyes went wide, confused. He looked down at the hole in his chest like he couldn't quite understand how it got there. Then he looked at Alara. "Oh," he said quietly, and collapsed forward onto Webb's body. Alara moved on pure instinct, grabbed Sullivan, dragged him back toward cover even as her mind calculated firing position, range, probability. The German sniper was northeast, elevated position, approximately 500 yards. She got Sullivan behind the shattered trunk of an oak tree, laid him on his back, saw immediately that it was bad, saw the blood pumping from the exit wound in rhythm with his heartbeat, saw the way his breathing was already turning shallow, labored. "Alara," Sullivan whispered. She pressed her hands against the wound, applied pressure that made him gasp. "Don't talk. Save your strength." "It's bad, isn't it?" "Yes. How bad?" She looked at his face, at the fear in his eyes, at the way his lips were already turning blue. "You're dying, Garrett." Most people would have lied, would have said, "You'll be fine," or "Hold on," or any of the comfortable lies people told to make death more bearable. Alara had never learned to lie about things that mattered. "Oh," Sullivan said again. His hand found hers, gripped weakly. "Figures. 2 weeks I managed not to get shot, then I go and be heroic. You were stupid. I told you not to move." "I know," he coughed. Blood flecked his lips. Can you tell my folks something?" "Yes. Tell them Tell them it was quick, that I wasn't scared. I'll tell them, even though it's a lie. Ilara's hands stayed pressed against the wound, feeling his blood pulse between her fingers, warm, slowing. Even though it's a lie. Sullivan's breathing hitched. His eyes lost focus for a moment, then found hers again. You know what's funny? What, 2 weeks ago I thought you were a machine, some kind of broken thing wearing a uniform, but you're not. You're just... He coughed again, harder. You're just scared. Scared of what you are, what you might be. Ilara said nothing. It's okay, Sullivan whispered, to be scared. It means you're still... He didn't finish the sentence. His hand went slack in hers, his eyes still open, still looking at her, but seeing nothing now. Seeing whatever came after seeing. Ilara remained there for 20 minutes, holding the hand of a dead man, feeling his blood cooling on her fingers. And for the first time since Callum Mackenzie died in a training accident 4 months earlier, she felt something, not grief, not exactly, but confusion, a sense that something was wrong, that she should be experiencing an emotion she couldn't name, that normal people, human people, would be crying or screaming or breaking down in some visible way. She felt none of those things, but she felt the absence of them. Felt the hollow space where those reactions should have been, and that absence felt heavier than any emotion she could remember. I should feel something, she whispered to Sullivan's corpse. Why can't I feel it? The forest had no answer. Only the wind through shattered trees and the distant rumble of artillery and the knowledge that somewhere out there a German sniper was watching, waiting for her to move, waiting to kill her the way he'd killed Garrett Sullivan, waiting for the hunt to continue. October 8th, 1944. 0623 hours. Captain Thaddeus Crane found Ilara at dawn. She was still beside Sullivan's body, still holding his hand, her uniform crusted with dried blood, her rifle across her lap, her eyes open but unfocused. Whitmore, Crane said quietly. She didn't respond. Ilara, she blinked, looked at him. Sir, how long have you been here? 14 hours, 17 minutes. Crane knelt beside Sullivan's body, closed the dead man's eyes with practiced gentleness, looked at Ilara. You stayed with him? Yes. Why? I don't know. Crane studied her face, saw something there he hadn't seen before. Not emotion exactly, but awareness. The faint recognition that something had changed. This is what I was afraid of, he said quietly. Sir, you're starting to realize what you are. Crane stood, offered his hand to help her up. You're starting to feel the weight. Ilara took his hand, stood. Her legs were stiff from hours of immobility. I don't feel anything. Then why did you stay with his body for 14 hours? She had no answer for that. Crane picked up her rifle, checked the action, handed it back. Intelligence identified the German who killed Sullivan, same one who left you that message. Oberst Heinrich Vogel, 56 confirmed kills, counter-sniper specialist. The Wehrmacht sent him here specifically to eliminate you. I know. He's good, Ilara. Maybe as good as you. Maybe. If you go after him, one of you will die. Ilara checked her rifle, chambered around, looked at Captain Crane with eyes that were no longer flat, no longer empty, but filled instead with something new, something dangerous. Yes, she said. One of us will. October 9th, 1944. The hunt. Ilara spent 18 hours preparing her trap. She knew Vogel was watching, knew he'd identified her patterns, knew he understood she'd come for him because coming for him was the only logical move remaining on the board. So she gave him what he expected, a hide position overlooking a valley where American forces would be moving supplies the following morning. Obvious. well constructed, the kind of position a sniper would use. And 200 yards away, invisible in the undergrowth, she prepared her real position. The wait began at 0400. Fog rolled through the valley like something alive. Temperature dropped to just above freezing. Alara's breath came in small clouds that dissipated instantly. She didn't move, didn't shift her weight, didn't do anything that would mark her as human rather than landscape. Hours passed. The sun rose, burned off the fog in layers, revealed the valley and the forest and her false position that sat empty and waiting. At 0847, she saw him. Movement, northeast, approximately 400 yards. Vogel approaching her false position with the same careful patience she would have used. Watching for tripwires, for disturbed earth. For any sign of trap, he was good. But Alara was 200 yards away with a perfect sight line. She centered the crosshairs on his chest. Calculated windage. Bullet drop. The slight downward angle. Her finger found the trigger and stopped. For the first time in her life, Alara Whitmore hesitated. Through the scope, she could see Vogel clearly now. See his face, the pale blue eyes, the absolute concentration, the same empty calm she saw in her own mirror every morning. He was what she was, made by war, made for war, a predator wearing human skin, and killing him would prove what? That she was better, that American predators outmatched German ones. That the emptiness inside her was somehow more righteous than the emptiness inside him. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Vogel stopped, turned, looked directly at where she was hidden. For 3 seconds they stared at each other across 400 yards of German forest. 2 snipers, 2 hunters, 2 broken things that had found their purpose in killing. Vogel raised his rifle. Alara made her choice. Both fired. The reports echoed through the forest simultaneously. 2 shots. 2 bullets crossing paths in the cold October air. Alara's shot was perfect. Center mass. 380 yards through dense trees, the kind of shot that would be studied in sniper schools for decades. It hit Vogel in the chest, punched through sternum and spine and dropped him like a puppet with cut strings. Vogel's shot was equally perfect, but it came a fraction of a second later. Came after Alara's bullet had already destroyed his aim. It caught her left shoulder, tore through muscle and grazed bone and spun her sideways with the impact. Pain, white and sharp and immediate. The first real physical pain Alara had felt in months. She gasped, rolled behind cover, applied pressure to the wound with her right hand, assessed the damage with the clinical detachment that had served her since childhood. Through and through. No arterial bleeding. Painful but not lethal. She'd live. Had Vogel Alara forced herself up, moved through the forest toward where she'd seen him fall. Every step sent pain lancing through her shoulder. She ignored it. Ignored the blood soaking her uniform. Ignored everything except the need to know. She found him at the base of a pine tree, still alive, barely. The shot had collapsed his left lung. Blood bubbled at his lips with each shallow breath. His rifle lay 5 feet away, scope shattered from the impact. Alara knelt beside him. Kept her rifle trained on his chest even though they both knew he was finished. Vogel's pale blue eyes found hers, recognized her, and incredibly impossibly he smiled. "You," he whispered in broken English. "I knew you were." He coughed. Blood spattered his chin. "Like me. I'm nothing like you. You feel it too. Yes." His breathing was labored. Each word cost him. The silence. The quiet inside where other people keep souls. Alara said nothing. "They fear us," Vogel continued, "because we don't lie. We don't pretend killing is noble. We know what we are. What are we? Monsters. Another cough. More blood. Honest monsters. His hand moved, slow, shaking, not reaching for a weapon, reaching toward her. Tell me, he whispered. Do you feel anything killing me? Elara looked at his hand, at his dying eyes, at the blood pooling beneath him that was the same color as the blood that had pumped from Garrett Sullivan's chests. Yes, she said quietly. What loss? Vogel's smile widened. Good. That means you're still... He died before finishing the sentence. Elara sat beside his body, not moving, just thinking about what he'd said, about what she was, about whether being good at killing made someone a soldier or just a murderer with authorization. An hour passed before Captain Crane found her. He's dead, Crane said unnecessarily. Yes. You're wounded. Yes. We need to get you to medical. Elara didn't move. I hesitated. What? When I had the shot, I hesitated, first time ever. She looked at Crane. Because I saw myself in him. Crane was quiet for a moment then. And what did you see? A monster. Is that what you think you are? Isn't it what you made me? Isn't that why you kept me? Because monsters are useful in war? Crane knelt beside her. His face was grave. I made a calculation, Elara. I saw your psychological profile and thought it would make you an effective weapon. I was right. You've killed more German snipers in 3 weeks than entire units have in 6 months. You've saved countless American lives. And I've lost my humanity doing it. Did you ever have it to lose? The question hung in the air between them. Finally, Elara stood. I don't know, but I think I want to find out. They evacuated her to the field hospital, treated her wound, gave her morphine she didn't need because the physical pain was nothing compared to the questions eating at her from inside. Lieutenant Brennan visited, stood at the foot of her bed, uncomfortable as always in her presence. Vogel's dead, he said. German radio traffic confirms it. They're calling it a major intelligence loss. Good. You saved a lot of American lives taking him out. I know. Brennan shifted his weight. Sullivan's family has been notified. I told them what you asked me to tell them, that it was quick, that he wasn't scared. Thank you. Was it true? Elara looked at him. No. Brennan's jaw tightened. Then why? Because some lies are kinder than truth. Elara sat up despite the pain in her shoulder. He was terrified. He knew he was dying, and he spent his last moments trying to comfort me because he thought I was scared of what I am. And are you? Yes. The word came out flat, empty. I've killed 11 men in 3 weeks. I should feel something about that. Guilt, pride, anything, but I don't. I just feel nothing. And the nothing is starting to feel worse than any emotion I can remember. Brennan was silent for a long moment, then, maybe that's a good sign. How? Because it means you're starting to understand what you've lost, and understanding loss is the first step toward being human again. He left. Elara lay back on the hospital bed, stared at the canvas ceiling, thought about Garrett Sullivan dying with her name on his lips, thought about Vogel's final words, thought about the 11 men she'd killed and the thousands she'd saved, and whether mathematics like that could ever balance. Outside, artillery rumbled, the war continuing without her, men dying on both sides, the great machine grinding forward, consuming lives and spitting out statistics. And somewhere in the chaos, Elara Whitmore began the long, painful process of wondering if monsters could learn to be human, or if humans who became monsters could ever find their way back. October 15th, 1944. The discharge came. Medical. Not psychiatric this time. Shoulder wound required 6 weeks recovery minimum. She'd be sent to rear echelon. assigned to training duties or administrative work until cleared for combat. But that night, radio intercepts changed everything. German forces were massing in the Ardennes sector, preparing for a major offensive. Intelligence estimated 200,000 troops, the largest concentration since D-Day. And directly in their path, a single American company, 40 men holding a critical road junction. If they fell, the entire sector would collapse. Captain Crane came to the hospital at 2300 hours. "You're being recalled," he said. "I'm wounded." "I know, and I'm asking anyway." He handed her a folder. "That American company is surrounded, cut off. German forces will overrun them by dawn unless something changes the math." Elara opened the folder, studied the terrain maps, the tactical assessments, the estimated casualties. "You want me to kill Germans until the company can withdraw. I want you to do what you do. Make impossible shots, create chaos, give good men a chance to survive. One sniper against 200 soldiers? Yes. That's suicide. Probably." Crane's expression was grave. "I'm not ordering this, Elara, I'm asking. And if you say no, no one will blame you. You've done enough, killed enough, saved enough." Elara looked at the maps, calculated firing positions, engagement zones, the mathematics of one woman trying to stop an army. The mathematics said it was impossible, but mathematics didn't account for what Elara Whitmore had become in the forests of Hurtgen, didn't account for the empty space inside her that had learned to be filled with purpose, didn't account for the fact that maybe, just maybe, dying for something was better than living with nothing. "I'll need my rifle," she said. Crane smiled, sad and proud simultaneously. "It's already in the Jeep." October 16th, 1944. 400 hours. Elara took her position on a ridge overlooking the road junction. Below, the American company had dug in, 40 men who didn't know they were already dead, and in the forest to the east, 200 German soldiers prepared to attack at dawn. Elara checked her rifle, loaded her final magazines, calculated the angles and the distances and the probability of surviving past first light. The probability was 0. She smiled, cold and empty and ready. Below, the American sergeant was checking his men's positions. Young faces, scared faces, boys who'd crossed an ocean to fight in a forest that would swallow them whole. But not yet. Not while Elara Whitmore still had bullets. Dawn came, and with it the final hunt began. October 16th, 1944. 0523 hours. Dawn. The first German soldier appeared at the forest edge exactly when Elara expected. She'd studied the terrain maps, understood how commanders thought, knew they'd send scouts to probe American positions before committing the main force. He was young, maybe 18. Moving carefully but not carefully enough, 200 yards from her position, 400 yards from the American company dug in around the road junction. Elara centered the crosshairs on his chest, breathed out slowly, squeezed. The shot echoed across the valley like a church bell announcing morning service. The German dropped without a sound. Through the scope, Elara watched the forest edge, waited, counted seconds. At 23, 2 more Germans emerged. Checking on their scout, moving into the open, she killed them both before they understood what was happening. 3 shots, 3 bodies, 3 German mothers who would receive telegrams in a language designed to make death sound noble. Kill count 71. Below in the American position, Sergeant Marcus Hayes heard the shots and understood. Someone was out there. Someone was buying them time. He didn't know it was one woman with a rifle and a death wish. He didn't know that in the next 6 hours that woman would redefine what one person could accomplish when they stopped caring about survival and focused only on the mission. The German assault came at 0547. Not 200 soldiers, 243 according to after-action reports compiled months later from captured documents. Nearly 6 companies of infantry supported by machine gun teams and mortar sections. Their objective: eliminate the American roadblock and push west to link up with armored elements driving toward the Meuse River. Their obstacle: 40 American soldiers with limited ammunition and no reinforcements. And one sniper who decided that mathematics was less important than making every bullet count. Ilara fired with methodical precision. Shot. Work the bolt. Acquire target. Fire. The rhythm of death delivered at distance. The Germans couldn't locate her position. She was 800 yards from their assembly area, elevated, hidden in dense undergrowth with sight lines that covered 3 separate approach routes. Every time a German officer tried to organize his men, Ilara put a bullet through him. Every time a machine gun team tried to set up, she killed the gunner. Every time soldiers tried to mass for an assault, she picked off the ones who looked most confident. The ones other men followed, the natural leaders whose deaths left units confused and leaderless. Kill 72 was a Feldwebel shouting orders. Kill 73 was a machine gunner. Kill 74 was a soldier carrying a radio. The German advance stalled. Commanders couldn't understand what was happening. Radio intercepts captured later showed their confusion. Reports of heavy American resistance and multiple sniper positions and coordinated defensive fire. It was one woman, one rifle, and a shoulder wound that had started bleeding again from the recoil, soaking her uniform, making her grip slippery with blood. At 0634, the Germans located her position. Mortar fire came screaming down. The ridge exploded in geysers of dirt and shrapnel. Ilara rolled away from her hide, moved 20 yards west, established a new position before the barrage ended. She kept firing. 75, 76, 77. Her barrel was overheating, the metal so hot it wavered the air above it. She poured water from her canteen over the mechanism. Steam hissed. The barrel cooled enough to keep firing. The Germans tried a flanking maneuver, sent 30 men through a creek bed that offered concealment from the ridge. Ilara saw them, calculated the angle. Started firing into the creek bed at targets she couldn't fully see, using muzzle flash and movement and pure instinct to place shots. She killed 4 before the rest retreated. At 0721, she took her second wound. German return fire finally found the range. A bullet meant for her head instead caught her right thigh. Punched through muscle and lodged against bone. The pain was immediate, overwhelming, the kind of injury that should have ended the fight. Ilara tied a tourniquet above the wound, didn't even pause in her firing sequence. Kill 78, 79, 80. Below Sergeant Hayes watched the German assault collapse, watched officers fall, watched their attack lose cohesion and momentum, watched impossible become reality. "Who the hell is up there?" his radio man asked. Hayes didn't know, didn't care. He was using the chaos to reposition his men, to consolidate their defenses, to prepare for the next assault. But the next assault never came. At 0803, the German commander made a decision. Pulled his forces back, regrouped, tried to understand what had just happened. His after-action report, discovered in archives 70 years later, documented the casualties. 18 dead, 27 wounded, all from what he estimated as multiple American snipers operating in coordinated defensive positions. He had no idea it was one 23-year-old woman who'd learned to turn herself into a weapon because being human hurt too much. The lull lasted 20 minutes. Ilara used the time to reload, to tighten her tourniquet, to calculate how many rounds she had left and how many Germans she'd need to kill before the American company could withdraw. The mathematics weren't favorable. She had 43 rounds remaining. Even assuming perfect accuracy, 1 shot, 1 kill, she couldn't eliminate enough Germans to break their assault. But she could create enough chaos, enough fear, enough doubt. War wasn't just about killing. It was about breaking the enemy's will to continue. Elara understood that now in ways she hadn't 3 weeks earlier. The second assault came at 0827. The Germans had learned. They came in dispersed formation, used smoke for concealment, advanced in short rushes that minimized exposure time. They were good, but Elara was better. She'd spent 3 weeks studying how German infantry moved, understood their tactics, knew that even dispersed they followed patterns. Squad leaders moved slightly ahead. Radio men stayed near commanders. Machine gunners looked for elevated positions. She exploited every pattern. Kill 81 was a squad leader trying to coordinate his men through smoke. Kill 82 was a radio man who made the mistake of extending his antenna. And Kill 83, the final confirmed kill of Elara Whitmore's combat service, was a German Hauptmann organizing the final assault wave. 520 yards, through morning fog, moving target. The shot was perfect. The officer fell, the assault wavered. And for just a moment the entire German attack hung in balance. Elara worked the bolt, chambered her final round, scanned for targets. But something had changed below. The German soldiers were pulling back, not retreating, just stopping. Standing in the open, weapons lowered, looking toward their rear. Through the scope, Elara saw why. American reinforcements. 2 companies of infantry with armored support, arriving from the west, the cavalry coming to save the surrounded garrison. Captain Crane had sent them, had convinced Division Command to redirect forces, had used the time Elara bought to organize a relief column. The battle was over. The American company had survived. 38 of 40 men, wounded, exhausted, traumatized, but alive. Elara lowered her rifle, tried to stand. Her leg wouldn't support her weight. The tourniquet had slowed the bleeding but couldn't stop it entirely. Blood loss and shock were catching up to her now that adrenaline was fading. She sat back down, leaned against a tree, watched the sun climb higher through the canopy. She'd done what Captain Crane asked, done the impossible. 1 sniper against 243 soldiers, and somehow improbably, impossibly survived. For now. The world was getting darker around the edges, her vision tunneling. Blood loss she understood clinically. Probably 15% total volume, maybe 20. Survivable if treated soon, if. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment, when she opened them, Sergeant Marcus Hayes was kneeling beside her. "Jesus Christ," he said, "you're just a kid." 23, Elara corrected. Her voice sounded distant, strange. "And you're—" Hayes stopped, stared. "You're a woman. Yes. You did all that alone. Yes." Hayes looked at the brass casings scattered around her position, looked at the blood soaking her uniform, looked at her gray eyes that were finally showing something human, pain, exhaustion, the weight of what she'd done. "Why?" he asked. Elara didn't have an answer for that, or maybe she did. Maybe the answer was that being useful was better than being empty. That saving lives gave meaning to someone who'd never understood meaning. That purpose, however brutal, was preferable to the void. But she didn't say any of that. She just said, "It's what I'm for," and passed out. October 18th, 1944. 112th General Hospital, England. Elara woke to white ceiling canvas and the smell of ether and antiseptic. Her shoulder throbbed. Her leg felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through the bone. Captain Crane sat in a chair beside her bed, reading a file. When he noticed her eyes open, he set it aside. "Welcome back," he said. "How long?" 2 days. They did surgery on your leg, removed the bullet, repaired the damage. You'll walk again, but you'll limp for the rest of your life. And the mission? Success. The company held, reinforcements arrived. The German offensive in that sector collapsed. Crane leaned forward. 83 confirmed kills, Elara, highest single operator tally in the European theater. You saved 38 American lives that day. Probably more considering what would have happened if that junction fell. How many Germans did I kill total? 83 confirmed. Intelligence estimates actual number is higher. Some kills in forward positions where bodies couldn't be recovered for verification. Ilara processed this. 83 human beings. 83 men with families and lives and futures she'd erased with mathematical precision. I should feel something about that, she said quietly. Do you know? She looked at Crane. I feel nothing, and that terrifies me more than any bullet. Crane was silent for a long moment. Then, the Army is putting you in for the Silver Star. Citation for exceptional gallantry in action. They're also recommending the Bronze Star with V device and a second Purple Heart. I don't want medals. I know, but you're getting them anyway. What you did matters, Ilara. You proved something important about capability and courage, and what one person can accomplish when they refuse to accept impossible. I proved that monsters are useful in war. Is that what you think you are? Isn't it what you made me? Crane stood, walked to the window, looked out at rain falling on England. I made a calculation. I saw your psychological profile and thought it would make you effective. I was right. You became the most lethal sniper in the theater. You saved countless American lives and lost my humanity in the process. Did you? Crane turned. Because from where I'm standing, you're showing more humanity now than you ever did before. You're questioning what you've done, wondering about the cost. That's not something a monster does. Then what am I? You're someone who adapted to war, who found purpose in chaos, who did terrible things for good reasons. Crane returned to his chair. The question isn't what you are, Ilara. It's what you choose to become when the war ends. And if I don't know how to be anything except this, then you learn, the same way you learn to be a perfect soldier. You learn to be human again. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. The war ended on a Tuesday. Ilara heard the news in a hospital ward where she'd been assigned to training duties. Her combat days were over. The leg injury had healed but left her with a permanent limp. Not enough to discharge her, just enough to keep her from forward deployment. She'd spent the final months of the war teaching marksmanship, passing on techniques to younger soldiers who looked at her with something between awe and fear. The woman who'd killed 83 Germans, the ghost of Hurtgen. They didn't understand that the ghost was already dead, that whatever Ilara Whitmore had been before the war, before Callum Mackenzie's blood on her hands and Garrett Sullivan's final words and Heinrich Vogel's dying smile, was gone forever. What remained was someone learning slowly and painfully to be human. Dr. Edmund Ashford requested a final evaluation before her discharge. They met in the same room where he'd recommended her Section 8 removal 9 months earlier. Same wooden chairs, same rain-streaked windows, different woman sitting across from him. Tell me how you feel, Ashford said. About what? About the war ending. Ilara considered the question. Relieved, confused, guilty. Guilty about what? That I'm glad it's over. That I won't have to kill anymore. She looked at her hands. Clean now. No blood. No gunpowder residue. But she could still feel Garrett Sullivan's final heartbeat against her palms. I should regret killing those men. Should feel remorse, but I don't. I just feel tired. What about when you were fighting? What did you feel then? Nothing. I was a machine, calculating distances and angles and probabilities. The Germans were just targets, mathematical problems to solve. And now I dream about them. Ilara's voice was quiet. I see their faces. I remember each shot, each kill. I can tell you exactly where every bullet hit, and I feel... She stopped, searching for words. Everything, all at once. For 9 months I felt nothing. Now it's drowning me. Ashford made notes. That's called delayed emotional processing. Combat does strange things to the human psyche. Sometimes we shut down to survive, and when the threat ends, everything we suppressed comes flooding back. Is that what happened to me? I shut down. In a sense, though your case is unique. Ashford set down his pen. When I evaluated you before, I saw emotional constriction as pathology, as evidence you couldn't function in military service. I was wrong. What I saw as disability was actually an adaptation. Your emotional architecture allowed you to do what needed doing without breaking. But I did break. Just later. Yes, and that breaking might be the most human thing about you. Alara was silent for a long moment. Then, do you think I'm a monster, Doctor? No. Why not? I killed 83 men without remorse, without hesitation. I turned myself into a weapon. Because monsters don't ask that question. Ashford leaned forward. You did terrible things, Alara, but you did them in service of something larger. You saved lives, prevented suffering. War forced you to become something you never wanted to be. The fact that you recognize that it haunts you proves you haven't lost your humanity. You've just misplaced it for a while. Can I find it again? I don't know, but I think the trying is what matters. August 1945, Montana. The ranch looked smaller than Alara remembered. Same mountains in the distance, same wind through the valley, same house where she'd grown up learning to shoot bottles off fence posts with her father's rifle. But everything felt diminished, like the world had shrunk while she was gone. Her father met her at the door, older now, grayer. He looked at her limp, at the Purple Heart ribbon on her uniform, at the daughter he'd sent to war who came back as something else. Welcome home, Ellie. The nickname made something twist in her chest. No one had called her Ellie since before the war, before she became Alara Whitmore, sniper killer ghost. Thanks, Dad. They stood in awkward silence, two people who'd once known each other learning to be strangers. I heard about what you did, her father said finally. The medals, everything. Yeah, 83 kills. That true, confirmed. Actual number is probably higher. Her father nodded slowly. Your mother would have been proud. Would she? You saved American lives, protected your fellow soldiers, did your duty. He paused. That's what matters, isn't it? Alara wanted to agree, wanted to believe that duty and purpose in saving lives outweighed the cost, wanted to feel something other than this hollow emptiness where pride or satisfaction should have been. But she didn't. She just felt tired. I'm going to rest, she said. It was a long trip. She limped to her childhood bedroom, sat on the bed where she'd slept for 18 years before the war, looked at the window where she used to watch stars and wonder what existed beyond Montana's borders. Now she knew. Death existed, and the knowledge that you could become very good at delivering it, and the weight of living with what you'd done. March 1948, 3 years later. The woman who knocked on Alara's door was 32. Dark hair, kind eyes, a resemblance around the mouth that made Alara's heart skip. Miss Whitmore, I'm Nora Mackenzie, Callum's sister. The name hit like a physical blow. Callum Mackenzie, the boy who died in a training accident, whose blood had been the first Alara felt without feeling anything at all. Yes, come in. They sat in the ranch house kitchen, drank coffee. Nora explained she'd been trying to find Alara for 2 years, had written to the War Department, had tracked her through military records in sheer determination. Why? Alara asked. Because Callum wrote about you, in his letters home. Nora pulled an envelope from her purse, old, creased from repeated reading. He said you were the most honest person he'd ever met, that you didn't pretend to feel things you didn't, That in a world full of people lying about who they were, you were real. Alara took the letter. Read Callum's handwriting describing her. His observations about the quiet girl who could outshoot everyone but never celebrated. Who helped others without expecting thanks. Who was different but different in a way that felt true. I let him die, Alara said quietly. No, war killed him. A faulty grenade killed him. You just happened to be there. I didn't cry. Didn't feel anything. I know, Callum wrote about that too. Nora's voice was gentle. He said he understood that some people process things differently, that not crying didn't mean not caring. He was wrong. I didn't care, couldn't care, not then. And now, Alara looked at the letter, at Callum's description of her, at the kindness in words from a boy who died before understanding how broken the world could make people. Now I cry all the time, she whispered. For him, for Sullivan, for every German soldier I killed, for the person I became. I feel everything now. And I don't know how to make it stop. Nora reached across the table, took Alara's hand. Then maybe I came at the right time. Maybe you need someone who understands loss, who knows what it means to survive when good people don't. They talked for 6 hours, about Callum, about the war, about what came after, about how survival sometimes felt harder than dying. Nora came back the next week, and the week after. By summer she'd moved to Montana. They were married in September 1948. Small ceremony, just family. 2 women learning that maybe, just maybe, love could exist in the ruins of what war had destroyed. 1950, 1983. The quiet years. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, raised them on the ranch, taught them to ride horses and respect weapons and understand that violence was sometimes necessary, but never noble. Alara never spoke about the war, not to her children, not to neighbors, not to the journalists who occasionally found her address and requested interviews about the ghost of Hurtgen. She declined every request. What had happened in those forests belonged to a version of herself she'd left behind. The killer, the weapon, the woman who'd learned to turn off her humanity and survive. But late at night she'd sometimes wake from dreams where she was back in her hide, scope trained on German soldiers. Finger on trigger, making calculations that ended lives, and Nora would hold her, would whisper that it was over, that she was home, that the war couldn't reach her here. Most nights it helped, some nights it didn't. In 1979, on her 58th birthday, Alara started writing. Not memoirs, not war stories, just thoughts, observations, the things she'd learned in forests where death came measured in meters and milliseconds. One entry dated November 12, 1979. For 9 months in the Hurtgen forest, I was the perfect soldier. No fear, no doubt, no mercy. I killed 83 men and saved thousands of lives. I earned medals and respect and the knowledge that when war needed a weapon, I became one. But coming home meant learning to be human again. Meant learning that the skills that kept me alive in war, emotional detachment, ruthless focus, the ability to kill without hesitation, were exactly what made peacetime unbearable. I spent 35 years learning to feel again, learning to love my wife, my children, learning that the opposite of being a weapon isn't being weak, it's being whole. The war made me useful. Peace made me human. I don't know which is harder, but I know which one I'd choose every time. Even with the nightmares, even with the weight, because monsters don't get to choose. Humans do. And choosing humanity every day despite everything, that's the bravest thing I've ever done. She died on March 15, 1983, 62 years old, heart failure, peaceful, in her sleep. Present day, Fort Benning, Georgia, United States Army Sniper School, instructor, First Sergeant Michael Torres stood before a class of 23 recruits. Men and women, different backgrounds, different reasons for being there, all learning to kill at distance. Today we're studying operational case histories, Torres said. Specifically, we're examining someone who changed how the Army understands sniper psychology and selection criteria. He activated the projector. A photograph appeared, black and white, faded, a young woman in uniform, gray eyes, no smile. Ilara Whitmore, 1944 to 1945, European theater, 83 confirmed kills, highest single operator tally in that theater for the entire war. The recruits leaned forward. Torres continued. Whitmore was initially recommended for psychiatric discharge, emotional constriction, inability to form normal social bonds, the kind of psychological profile that today would probably still disqualify someone from military service. So how did she end up as a sniper? Someone asked. Because one officer recognized that the traits making her unsuitable for normal infantry, emotional detachment, ability to work in complete isolation, capacity to kill without moral hesitation, were exactly what made her perfect for sniper operations. Torres pulled up mission reports, declassified documents. The details of that final stand where one woman held off 243 German soldiers. Whitmore proved something important, proved that optimal performance in specialized roles doesn't always align with conventional mental health standards. The Army revised its sniper selection criteria because of her. We screen now for emotional regulation rather than emotional warmth, for capacity to function independently rather than social cohesion. Is that a good thing? Another recruit asked, making soldiers more detached. That's the question, isn't it? Torres looked at the photograph of Ilara, at those gray eyes that had seen things no 23-year-old should see. Because Whitmore also proved the cost. After the war, she struggled with delayed PTSD, took decades to reintegrate, wrote in her journal that becoming a weapon was easy. Becoming human again was the hardest fight of her life. The classroom was silent. So what's the lesson? Torres asked. The lesson is this war requires people who can do terrible things, but we have a responsibility to those people, to help them afterward, to understand that asking someone to become a weapon has consequences we can't always predict. He advanced to the next slide. Technical diagrams, firing solutions, the mathematics of death that Ilara Whitmore had mastered. We still teach Whitmore's techniques, the Whitmore method of pattern recognition, her hide construction protocols, her engagement strategies. She was that good. But we also teach this. Final slide, Ilara's journal entry about choosing humanity. Because the best sniper isn't the one who kills most efficiently. It's the one who understands the weight of every trigger pull. Who does what's necessary but never stops being human. Who recognizes that in war we sometimes have to become monsters, but that becoming monsters means we have a responsibility to find our way back. Torres looked at his recruits. Some of you will become snipers, will learn to kill at range, will save American lives by ending others, and you'll be good at it, maybe too good. Just remember Ilara Whitmore. Remember that she saved thousands of lives, won medals, changed doctrine, and still spent 35 years learning to live with what she'd done. The shooting is the easy part. Living with it afterward, that's the real challenge. Class dismissed. March 15th, 2025. Montana. Whitmore Family Ranch. The gravestone was simple, granite, no flourishes. Ilara Whitmore, 1921 to 1983, beloved wife. Mother, U.S. Army, 1942-1945, no mention of kills, no reference to medals. Nothing about the ghost of Hurtgen or the woman who'd become a legend by becoming a weapon. Just a name, dates, relationships that mattered more than war. A young woman stood before the grave. 25. Army uniform, Ranger tab, sniper qualification badge, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, granddaughter of Sergeant Marcus Hayes, the man whose company Alara had saved in that final impossible stand. "I made it, ma'am," Sarah said to the stone. "Finished sniper school, top of my class. They taught us your methods, showed us your mission reports. You're kind of a legend there." The wind moved through the valley. Same mountains, same sky, same Montana that had raised a girl who learned to kill with mathematical precision. "My grandfather never stopped talking about you. Said you saved his life. Said he spent 70 years trying to understand how one person could do what you did." Sarah knelt, placed her hand on the cold granite. "He said you were the bravest person he ever met. Not because you weren't afraid, but because you were terrified of what you were becoming and did it anyway." She stood, saluted, held it for 5 seconds. "I won't forget, ma'am. Won't forget what you proved, what you sacrificed, what you spent the rest of your life trying to find again." The salute dropped. The lieutenant walked back to her car. Back to Fort Benning. Back to a war that never really ended, just changed locations and names and reasons. But some things remained constant. The need for people who could do terrible things for good reasons. The cost those people paid. And the question that haunted everyone who learned to be perfect at killing: can weapons become human again? Alara Whitmore spent 35 years proving the answer was yes. But that the journey back was harder than any shot she ever took. Epilogue. The forest remembers. In the Hurtgen, where American and German blood soaked the same soil, where 83 men fell to a woman they never saw, the trees still stand. Older now, bearing scars from shells and bullets and the machinery of industrial death. Tourists visit sometimes. Walk the trails, read the markers about battles fought and lives lost. They see numbers, statistics, the abstract mathematics of war. They don't see Alara Whitmore in her hide, don't see the calculations behind every shot, don't see the weight that accumulated with every trigger pull until it became almost too heavy to carry. They don't see Garrett Sullivan bleeding out while whispering her name. Don't see Heinrich Vogel's final smile of recognition. Don't see Callum Mackenzie's blood on rifle stocks that needed cleaning. They don't see what war makes of people, what it takes, what it leaves behind. But the forest remembers, and somewhere in archives and training manuals and the collective memory of a military that learned from her example, Alara Whitmore remains. Not as a hero, not as a monster, but as proof that sometimes the most broken among us can do the most good, and that choosing to remain human despite everything is the bravest act of all.